biggest things that we hear a lot of people either quit their routine or they get discouraged is because, I just don't have motivation, right? I don't have motivation, therefore I can't stay consistent. Those two things often go hand in hand. And I've said time and time again, and I know this because myself, having fallen victim to many a times of having zero motivation, that it's a discipline that you build. But with that discipline, there are some things that you can do and think about to help solidify your fitness, health and fitness lifestyle, okay? Because if this is something that you're finding that every time the new year comes around, you're having to, I'm going to get back on my fitness routine, right? We hear that time and time again with New Year's resolutions. Then these things, at least in my opinion, are super important to take a look at and ask yourself if you have these things sort of set in motion to help you with motivation, okay? And staying consistent. So we're gonna dive in, friends. So the first thing that is important to think about when you are finding that you're constantly not motivated and struggling sticking to your fitness routine is you are hanging out with the wrong people. And that might sound simple enough, okay? And I know you probably are like myself, where you're like, just give me a checklist of things I need to do to be motivated, right? Like, I love a fucking checklist. Like, give me a checklist and I'm about that, right? Like a to-do, like how do you do a thing? And this isn't going to be super easy. It's simple. Okay, there's a difference. It's simple, but it's not easy. And when you have these things in place, it makes your fitness lifestyle a lot easier. So the first one, which is super important, like I said already, is you have to hang out with like-minded people. Now, it is entirely possible for you to be successful with your fitness, health and fitness, even if you're not surrounded with people who are doing it as well and healthy, active people, but it is a lot harder. Let me tell you, if you do not have friends who are interested in health and fitness, your partner, your family, there is an old adage that is, you are the sum of the 5 closest people you hang out with. So I urge you to think about that for a quick second, and who are the 5 closest people that you hang out with, and are they conducive to what you are trying to do with your health and fitness lifestyle, or do they make it more challenging? Okay. And I've talked about it before, how like my dad, my parents, my whole family, very unhealthy. And I was the first one in the family that was like, this fitness thing, I'm going to make this thing a thing, right? Just for the sake of my health. I didn't realize I was going to turn it into a whole ass career, but I am not mad about it. Okay. So it made it really hard to make the shift in the beginning because my family had such resistance at the time. I was married. When I got married, I was like, kind of into fitness and like exercising. My ex-husband and I, that was something we had in common when we first met, but I wasn't a trainer yet. And I wasn't like really hardcore just yet. I was like dabbling. I was kind of a traditional, like make a New Year's resolution. I'd be really good for like 3 to 4 months. I'd fall off for like a month or 2. Then I'd go back. It was not consistent. Okay. Just so you guys know, this wasn't something I was like, as soon as I did fitness, like I never looked back. No, I had like a really rocky road with fitness at first. And I think a huge piece of this is because my family, my husband, we weren't like committed to this as a lifestyle. In fact, my family was anti-supportive. Okay. Like my dad would be like, so frustrated if he'd come over and to visit and I'm like, I got to go to the gym or I got to do this or whatever. And he would just like throw a fit, okay? My dad's like a very stubborn, old-fashioned Portuguese man. And he was just like, did not get it, okay? Why are you eating vegetables? Why are you going to the gym? Like this whole thing. So all that to say, for those of you that are just kind of dropping in now, is your vibe, your tribe, like your tribe affects your vibe. Okay. I know you've probably heard that before, but super important that you are surrounded with like-minded people. And if you can find, nose is running. If you can find a community, okay, which we have obviously in our town, we have our studio. So it's great because our clients have each other. There's a little bit of a community within the personal training atmosphere that we have at the studio. And we try to cultivate that and get these girls to be friends outside of the studio and things like that, because it makes it easier for them. So when you have friends or a partner or family who are indeed supportive, does not mean they have to be about it. It's helpful. It's very, very helpful because it does tend to trickle down as far as your decisions and things like that, if you hang out with these people. But it makes it much easier because you have this common ground. You have a little bit of a sense of accountability. It makes it easier for a lot of other things, right? Like grocery shopping, if this is your household or who you live with, the activities that you're doing, what you partake in terms of socially and things like that. Excuse me. And if your immediate circle and your immediate tribe is a bunch of partiers, people who don't prioritize their health, they just kind of are doing whatever. They love partaking in just junk food constantly and, things like that. It's going to make it harder for you when you're in a situation and you're feeling a little weak. Because your social circle is you're heavily influenced by that. I mean, think about like if you have children or you went to high school, you think about the people you hung out with, and maybe you had a parent that was like they didn't want you hanging out with certain people, right? Like this is a thing because we are often influenced by our friends and our immediate circle. So that's the first one, and I spent a lot of time on that because it's really, really huge. And one that we hear often is, my partner isn't on board or my partner isn't taking care of themselves. And it makes it really hard for me, or my kids, aren't involved, or they don't want to be, that kind of a thing. It just makes it really hard. So that's number one. Okay. Find cool ass people who like to work out and do the same things you do and be their friends. And you guys are already one step ahead. You're in a Facebook group, which is helpful, an online Facebook group, but it is even better if you can find it IRL, okay, in real life, like the cool kids say, because that will take you much further and you will have that support, especially on the days when you are just like, I don't want to do this fitness thing. It's like way too hard, right? The second reason why a lot of people can't stick to their health and fitness routine is something I talked about a lot at the beginning of this year, because the new year, which is you have no idea what your goal is. Okay. And while I do feel like there is a point, at least kind of, this is where I'm at now, but there is a point where you exercise and you eat well because it's just a part of what you do, but it's hard to get to that point for some people, right? It took me, I feel like way too long to get to that point where I was like, okay, this is like brushing my teeth. Like I have to move my body, right? There's no option. This is like what we need for survival. That's not usually what calls people to like make a change at first. It's usually something they don't like about their appearance. That's usually number one. And number two is some kind of like health issue or scare or somebody in the family. And then it like like light bulb, like I got to do some shit, right? But when you are first starting, if you don't have a goal, then it makes it really, really difficult because you don't know where you're going. You're just like, I'm just going to go in the gym and like, I don't know, I'm just here. Like, it doesn't give you direction and a pull forward, right? There is some validity to setting goals as far as putting the wheels in motion, even subconsciously, about the choices that you make and the decisions that you make when it comes to your health and fitness. So if you are not setting goals and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to get in shape, that tells you nothing. That tells your brain absolutely nothing in terms of your marching orders. Like, what does that mean? What does get in shape mean? It's a very vague goal. So if you can come up with a very detailed, specific, measurable, timely, they're called SMART goals. I'm giving them to the acronym all backwards, but a very specific goal, then you can start to take the baby steps you need to get there. It's not this big, like, I need to lose weight, right? That's great. That's a great starting point. But what does that mean? Is that 5 pounds? Is that 20 pounds? When do you want to have that happen by, right? Like, how are you going to make that happen? Setting in some strategy for your process is super duper important. And I did a workshop at the beginning of the year for SMART goals. And I spent a long time. I created a workbook for the workshop. So we could go through that and like look at every single detail that needs to be considered for someone to be successful when they set a goal, in this instance, health and fitness goal. So you got to know what you're doing, because otherwise you just have no plan. It's just like this goal, no plan, right? Or this very vague goal without a plan. So some things to think about are visualizing like what it is that you want to look and feel like, right? Like what is your, if I gave you a magic wand, here it is right here, bibbity bobbity boo, close your eyes and think about what your goal is. Now, sometimes that's really hard, right? Like, I don't know. So I want you to think about like 3 months is an easy one. 3 months into the future. 3 months into the future, when if you're driving or, doing something where you cannot close your eyes, don't do that right now, but closing your eyes and thinking about, in 3 months, how do I want to wake up and feel in my body? Think about those things and really get focused on putting some emotion behind it instead of like, oh, I want to lose a little bit of this. Like, okay, that's not going to wake you up in the morning, right? That's not going to get you out of bed and for your new workout routine at 5 a.m. Like, you have to have a deeper connection to why you're doing the thing you do. Super important. So that's number 2. Number 3 is I'm not saying you, but people, those that struggle with this, do not put their workout times in their calendar. It doesn't live in real time in their calendar. It's like, I'm going to work out this week, but there's like no plan. Sometime after work or, sometime before work. That is a surefire way to lose your momentum and your consistency, because it's actually not living as a appointment with yourself on your calendar. Now, I did this for years in the very beginning. I would just be like, oh, these were the days of my body pump and group fitness days, which is where I kind of started with fitness. It was like my very first foray was like jazzercise, if anybody remembers that shit. But it was like, oh, I'm just going to go to a class, right? But I didn't like make it live in my calendar. Now we have smartphones. We have calendars for that, which are huge and important to use when it comes to setting your routines, I feel like, because you can set reminders and it lives there and you can see it, and it's going to constantly be top of mind when you open your calendar and all those things. It's another touch point to get you accountable to what you said you wanted to do. Now, super easy for us to cancel on ourselves usually, right? So we'll go over, that's another one of my bullet points, but getting it in your calendar, time blocking it, asking yourself, when is the ideal time for me to get this done where I am not going to try to talk myself out of it, okay? Now, this isn't necessarily your favorite time to get it done. It is the time where you're like, if I just get it done, then I will not procrastinate it or talk myself out of it later, okay? For most people, unfortunately, it's going to be bright and early unless you have little baby kiddos that can't stay at home. If you're like a single mom, like I was for a long time, I couldn't take off and leave them with me. So I went after work. But if you have the ability to train first thing in the morning, I know what you're saying. I'm not a morning person. I can't work out in the morning. And I get that. But if you find that you can't stick to a PM routine because you're too tired after work, the day gets caught up and you have then to now put out fires for like your kids or your spouse or family or whatever, and you get put on the back burner, you might have to bite the bullet and become a morning person. And let me tell you, it's easier than you think. Trust me. I'm the anti-morning worker-outer person, but as soon as you set a routine, your body will naturally want to get up at that time. Okay. I know it does not sound like reality, but trust me when I say what tends to happen is for my girls that develop a morning routine who were not morning routine kind of gals is that they find that it's really rough the first like 2 weeks, sometimes 3. If you aren't then planning your evenings to get enough rest, it makes it harder. But if you stick to it and you fight through it and you get up and you don't hit snooze and you push past it, once you get your body adjusted to that, you'll naturally start to fall into a rhythm of being sleepier earlier and then getting your ass to bed. And then you have now created a new habit. Okay. It takes time, but it's doable. The fourth reason is you can't stick to your routine. And this is kind of a silly one, but still I feel like very important because it's a huge part of my fitness routine. In fact, I will leave the gym if I don't have headphones. But your music sucks. So if your music while you're training doesn't get you excited and motivated and kind of like pumped up to do the damn thing, when you get into the gym, you're going to struggle because if you already struggle with motivation, you know, what is in your headphones? So I personally cannot listen to podcasts or audiobooks when I'm training because my brain is like wanting to be in learning mode, and not in fuck shit up mode. Okay. I'm just being real. So, so when I am, training, I have talked about this many times on the podcast about how I have curated a playlist that I only listen to when I'm training. And you can create different playlists for yourself. So that way, you know, like, okay, when I'm doing cardio, this is like my cardio playlist. When I'm doing weights or when I'm doing legs, like these are the songs. If you want to get a little more into your music, which I think is a fun thing to do when you're just like bored of the gym or you're kind of like doing this for a while, right? It's like you need a new playlist. So, that's super important. I don't play that music anywhere else. So my gym playlist is just for the gym. And the reason is that your brain is a very powerful computer. Okay. And when your brain starts to associate your playlist with this is gym music and it's go time, you start to kind of condition yourself a little like Pavlov's dogs. Okay. Who remembers that from high school? I can't believe I pulled that out of the archives right now. But when you have that music like playlist curated and you don't listen to it in your car or when you're cleaning, then you're like, ooh, you look forward to it. Like I look forward to my gym playlist to the point where like, if I'm driving in my car and I have like Spotify on and one of the songs that's on my gym playlist comes on, I will change it. I'm like, I don't want to listen to this now. I want to save it for the gym. Okay. Like I'm a little crazy like that, but yes, your playlist, super important. My favorites are, EDM, so electronic dance music. So it has like a good tempo for cardio. And then I personally prefer like hip hop or some kind of like nasty rap for weight training. Okay. So you got to find what gets your juices flowing. Okay. The fifth thing that oftentimes derails people from sticking to their routine is they are not fueling themselves properly. So it makes them tired when it becomes time to go to the gym, right? So you know the scene, cue the scene. It's the end of the day at work. You have your gym bag in the car and you're all well-intentioned to go to the gym and do your thing. You're not meeting your friends. You're just like, you're doing your thing. End of the day comes, you're like, oh, I am tired. My brain is exhausted. Work was whatever, stress, and you're just exhausted. You didn't eat well throughout the day. That's a huge problem, especially if you're going to try to go leave work and get under some heavy weight or have any kind of like energy for even something like a group class or cardio or something, whatever your exercise flavor is. Okay. One thing that is highly underrated that a lot of people miss out on when they're first starting their fitness routine is their pre-workout meals. Okay. And that's what personal trainers say. It's a fancy, your pre-workout. What'd you have for your pre-workout meal? Bitch, what did you just eat? Okay. Like, what have you eaten today? What have you eaten before? What was your meal before you're going to the gym? If your meal before your gym workout was at 12 during your lunch and you're trying to work out at 6 p.m., that's a problem, right? You've gone from noon to 6 and you're going to go try to like lift a bunch of weight. You're going to struggle. You're going to be tired. You're going to feel worn out. You're going to lose some steam. You're not going to be your best for that training session. And yeah, those days happen. Trust me, they happen. Not all of my gym training days are 100%. Okay. They are not. However, I know that if I don't eat properly, then I'm going to struggle if I try to do a PM workout. So super important that if you are, specifically, a PM worker outer, that's a thing, that you are eating enough so that way you can have energy to sustain you to get to that workout in the evening. Now, if you're an early riser, that's sometimes a challenge. And I get this, I've been getting this question actually a lot, like, hey, specifically because we're just about done with the Goddess Body Project, which we're enrolling right now, by the way, the next session. But a lot of our girls are like, I get up and I'm up at 4, I'm not hungry. Like I don't have time to eat. I don't want to go train on like a giant full stomach. And to that, I say to my early risers, I'm going to give my PM girls a few tips here too, but for my early risers, something you have to consider, and I'm not telling you to get up an hour before and like have an elaborate breakfast, but something you have to consider is a lot of people forget is that when you're sleeping, you're fasting. Okay. And that's why a lot of people, with, that do intermittent fasting have, their fast is done a lot while they're sleeping. Because you're fasting, you're not eating, your body's digesting, you're in a state of fasting. Okay. So when you wake up, you're in this fasted state. And if you're going to then jam over to the gym and like get on a leg press or a hack squat or whatever, and try to press like, I don't know, 3 plates on each side or whatever, like 400 pounds, you haven't had anything since dinner the night before, your body, is likely not going to perform at its best without something, right? A great, easy, quick, easily digestible snack. It's not even really a meal before you go train, especially if you're an early morning trainer or early morning worker outer, is just a few rice cakes, like 2 or 3 little plain white rice cakes or whatever, just something quick and easy. So you have that like quick, easily digestible form of carbohydrate to get you through a training session. Just a little bit of something is going to help you in your training session. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Now, if you're training after work, I usually like to give myself 60 minutes to digest. That's my preferred, like at least 60 minutes. 90 is better for me, especially if you're going to do legs. Give yourself an hour and a half to digest before you go and lift weights. Like, it's not comfortable trying to lift after you just had a giant meal. So give yourself some time to digest, but some easy, a piece of fruit and some like a protein shake, just something light, so you can have something in your stomach and not be exhausted. So if you have lunch at noon or 1 at work, and you usually go at like 5 or 6 p.m. to the gym, have some kind of snack in between, or even a protein bar, something sustainable that isn't too high in fat. And the reason why I say that is because it's slower digesting, and sometimes that can also interfere with your training session because your body's trying to digest. So something that's not too high in fat, and that has some carbs and some protein. And then we'll give you a little bit of a boost for you to get through a workout.